A 21-year-old walked onto center court at Wimbledon, and half the crowd didn't know how to say her name. 10 days later, that same crowd was on its feet, waving flags they hadn't packed, for a woman who had just lost. Stay with me. Because the part that matters here isn't the win. It's what happened after she didn't win at all. 2 a.m. Manila time, and a teenage boy is filming his television screen with a shaking phone because he doesn't trust his own memory to hold on to this. 9,000 kilometers away, on the other side of the planet, the player he's watching is bouncing a tennis ball exactly 3 times before every single serve. Same rhythm, same 3 bounces. She's done it since she was a kid, practicing on courts that doubled as basketball courts on weekends, shared space in a country that has never had the luxury of empty tennis facilities. She doesn't know anyone's filming her yet. She's just trying to breathe. Center court doesn't do secrets well. 90 years of grass have been walked on by legends, and the crowd there has seen every kind of player. There is the ones who arrive already famous, and the ones who arrive as a name on a scorecard nobody bothered to check. On this particular afternoon, under a sun that had turned the grass the color of old money, nobody in those stands had circled her name on their bracket sheet. She was supposed to be a first-round mention, maybe second round if the tennis gods were feeling generous. Then gone, forgotten by the time week 2 started. The way it goes for almost everyone who isn't already a household name. That was the story everyone else had already written for her. She just never agreed to it. Here's the exact number that should stop you cold. Before this tournament, no player from her country, man or woman, ever, in the entire history of the sport, had reached the 4th round of a Grand Slam. Not once. Not close. She was 2 matches away from doing something that had literally never happened for over 100 million people watching back home. Her first real test wasn't some overmatched journeywoman. It was the defending Wimbledon champion. A player who doesn't just beat opponents, she dismantles them, methodically, like she's checking boxes off a list, point by point, until there's nothing left to check. For a set and a half, that's exactly what it looked like happening again. And then something shifted, so quietly that even commentators almost talked over it. Watch her eyes in that stretch. They never left the baseline. Not once up at the crowd, not once rattled by the name on the other side of the net. Her swings got bigger. Her footwork got earlier. Nothing loud about it, just point after point, until the wall she was supposed to run straight into simply wasn't there anymore. Final point. The return sails long. And for 1 full second, nothing. No sound. No movement. Thousands of people forgetting how to breathe at exactly the same moment. Then the sound arrives, and it does not stop. Because a nobody just beat a legend on the most famous court in the sport, and everyone in that stadium knew they'd just watched something they'd be describing to people for years. By sunrise, it wasn't a score anymore. It was every front page in the Philippines. Office workers set alarms 2 hours early. Students with exams that morning stayed up anyway. Nobody was sleeping through this. This is where the story is supposed to end. Quietly, one big upset. A nice headline, reality reasserting itself in the very next round. Except reality had other plans. Waiting for her in the 4th round was a woman who understood grass better than almost anyone left in the draw, a Wimbledon finalist from 2 years earlier. Flat and fast and brutally efficient on the one surface that punishes hesitation. And there was history buried underneath it too. The kind that doesn't make highlight reels. Months earlier, on a hard court in Dubai, our underdog had beaten her. Not narrowly. Decisively, that loss had sat quietly in the back of a proven finalist's mind for 5 months, waiting for exactly this kind of stage to answer it. So when the draw paired them, this stopped being a nice story about an underdog. It became something sharper. Personal. Unfinished. The first set went to experience. An early wobble. A double fault into the net post. Nerves doing what nerves do on a stage this big, and the finalist closed it out clean. 4 games to 6. It looked, for a moment, like the fairy tale had already run its course. It hadn't. The second set is where everything turned a break here, a break back there. Momentum changing hands like a card trick nobody could follow. Until a lucky net cord bounced her way at exactly the moment she needed it. And instead of wasting it, she stepped in and ripped a forehand into the corner. Set 1. Match level. Somewhere in the stands, A flag got raised so high the person holding it nearly lost their balance. That should be the moment you exhale. It wasn't. The deciding set felt like something else entirely heavier, tighter, every point carrying weight the first two sets simply hadn't. Because here's the piece nobody says out loud. Her opponent had already lived through a Wimbledon final decider once before. She hadn't. Not at this level, not with 100 million people watching from 12 time zones away. She kept swinging the same fearless way that had taken down a champion days earlier, but the finalist started reading her patterns half a step early now, anticipating the cross-court ball before it even left the strings. One small adjustment. It changed everything. The break came. Then the finalist served for the match at 5-3. Our underdog attacked every single return anyway. Refused to give away one free point. Fought for every inch like the scoreboard hadn't already decided the outcome. It didn't matter. One clean serve, one final forehand, and it was over. 2.5 hours of the best tennis the tournament had produced, and the scoreboard said, loss. She didn't collapse. Didn't cry. Walked straight to the net and shared a warm, genuine embrace with the woman who just ended her run. And then the entire stadium rose to its feet, not for a trophy, not for a champion, but for a 21-year-old who had just spent 2 weeks rewriting what people believed was possible for someone from where she comes from. Here's the twist, and it's the only part of this story that actually matters. The scoreboard says she lost. Watch those 2.5 hours again, though, and you'll see something completely different. A player who refused to be intimidated by a legendary name across the net, who clawed all the way back from a set down against an opponent with real personal motivation for revenge, who pushed a deciding set to the very final game while an entire country stayed awake past midnight just to watch her do it. Her opponent didn't cruise to that win. She had to survive it, using every ounce of composure she'd built across an entire career, against someone who had walked onto that court unranked in the public imagination just 10 days earlier. Losses like that don't feel like losses. They feel like arrivals. And that's exactly why this traveled so far past the sport itself. This is the specific ache of being written off before anyone even watches you play, and then making the whole world watch anyway. It's why a grandmother in a village with no tennis court stayed up till 3 in the morning for a game she barely understood the rules of. It's why sports bars near Manila opened 4 hours early just so fans could get a seat. This isn't really about tennis. It's about what it feels like to carry the hope of 100 million people who have never had a reason to watch this sport before, and to not fold under that weight not once, across 2 of the biggest matches of your entire life. She is not the finished version of herself. She's 21, ranked well outside the top 50 coming into this tournament, and this result alone will lift her rankings high enough to seed her directly into major draws instead of fighting through qualifying rounds. The next logical marker is a first tour-level title, something well within reach within the next 18 months given this level. After that, a serious run at a home continent's biggest events, where crowds that once had to find illegal streams at 3 in the morning will finally get to watch her live. And somewhere past that, if this trajectory holds, an actual Grand Slam semifinal, not a fantasy. A plausible next chapter for a player who just proved she doesn't blink against legends. 2 weeks before this, nobody across the net from her would have thought twice about her name. Now it's printed on front pages 9,000 kilometers from where she learned the game on a shared court, bouncing a ball 3 times before every serve because that's the only thing she's ever fully controlled. The scoreboard from that Monday afternoon will fade the way every scoreboard eventually does. Tennis moves on fast, and most players who have one incredible fortnight get forgotten within a season if they don't back it up immediately. But some results don't measure a ranking. They measure belief. Hers, and an entire nation's, built match by match over 2 weeks that nobody saw coming, and that nobody who actually watched will forget. She walked down that tunnel, out of the light, out of the noise, and the applause behind her still hadn't stopped. So here's what I want to know from you when a legendary champion falls to a player nobody outside her own circle had heard of 10 days earlier. Is that luck? Or is that the actual moment a career tips over into something bigger? Tell me in the comments. In a few years, when everyone knows this name, you'll want a record of when you knew first.